Everybody, welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 198, recorded on April the 18th, 2012. I'm Ryan Shrout.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
And I'm Alan Malventano.
For once, I am not the person away from the office. It's actually Alan who's away from the office. Alan, where are you? Can you tell us? Are you allowed to tell us this time?
I'm in Suffolk, Virginia.
You don't got to cuss at us. Just tell us.
Is that
Suffolk.
south of Norfolk, Virginia?
That is west of Norfolk.
Oh, damn it.
That doesn't make any sense.
Someone does not, yeah.
So we're starting a little late on the recording side, but a lot of interesting stuff happened this week. I should note we're only technically two episodes away from our 200th episode. And for the 200th episode, we're going to do an all Josh all the time episode.
With my shirt off.
And tassels. And we just canceled it. So 199 will be our last podcast. Everybody make sure you tune in for that. Let's just jump into the good stuff this week. We had a handful of reviews. First up, I wanted to mention we had a Main Gear Shift PC in for review, which, when we do system reviews here at PC Perspective, we kind of, they're a little bit different than what you might see at like PC Mag or something like that, because we're so used to testing individual components. When we get a full system in, we almost know what to expect in terms of performance and all that kind of stuff right away. To my surprise, though, when we opened up this machine, they said, hey, we're going to send you a shift for review. I was like, okay. And then totally my fault. I accidentally just kind of forgot about the system during the move and finally I was like, yes, right, I got this system here. Let's plug this in. And it actually had 3 Radeon 7970s in it, which was a total surprise to me. It had a Core i7 3960X, the highest end Sandy Bridge E processor that's out there, and then triple 7970s. So it had quite a bit of horsepower in there. So I actually felt really bad about neglecting it and just leaving it sit there. I bet there's some PC gamers out there just crying that for probably the better part of 60 days, this Sandy Bridge E triple 7970 sat in a box in a closet, not being gamed on and played on. So we felt bad about that. So we did a review of it, and it actually turned out to be a really good system. And like I said, when you're talking about a 3960 and triple 7970s, you know what you're going to get in performance, and it's going to be really, really, really impressive. That's not a surprise. This is the first time I've actually used a Main Gear Shift. Main Gear is a really kind of well-known brand for system builders. They've done a good job, I think, maintaining some of the prestige that goes with brands like Voodoo Extreme and like the old Alienware days, where you had really, really high-end systems.
Just Voodoo?
I'm sorry. Yeah, there we go. How about that one? What was I thinking of? I was thinking of Falcon Northwest. That one has 2 words. Yeah, Voodoo Extreme, not the same thing. So Main Gear has kind of stuck to that, and I give them a lot of props for that, because they haven't really gone down the realms of some of the other system builders who are starting to build $400 computers, and they're trying to do quantity over quality. Main Gear is still definitely about quality over quantity, and it shows. The case is what's this case based on? The Raven or the Raven 2 design. It's got a 90-degree rotated internal setup right there, so that the connectors, the graphics cards all vent up as opposed to out the back, which it's nice. It's not necessarily, I think it's kind of improving that it's not a huge jump in performance better in terms of that kind of stuff, but it's nice, it's cool, it's different. The case design as well, it's not just a Raven, it's kind of built on that chassis, but it's custom made for them. It's heavy, it's sturdy, it's got cool design points to it and that kind of stuff.
Can you stand on it?
I didn't try on this one.
Oh, damn.
I still wish I had one of those cases. What the hell case was that again? That was the
It's the Raven 02?
No. It was
Blackbird. Blackbird 02.
Blackbird. Yeah, there you go. It was the Blackbird, and that one could support 300 pounds. I don't weigh 300 pounds, but it supported 300 pounds, they tell me. And I did stand on it. That was one of my favorite pictures that we posted on the site. This one, I felt like it could, but with all the components coming out on the top, I didn't really want to stand on them so much. That's probably a bad idea. So yeah, I mean, they also had Main Gear does some interesting stuff. They're trying to find ways to differentiate as a system builder, and it's really hard when you're building PCs based off components that any one of us can go to Newegg or Amazon or Tiger Direct and buy. So how do they make themselves so they're not just somebody who's taking the same parts off the shelf, putting it together and sending it to you? They've done some things. They have their own custom water coolers now. The Epic 180 water coolers. Actually, they sent us one to just kind of evaluate and play with, and it's on our GPU test bed. It's a 180 millimeter radiator that has a 180 millimeter Silverstone fan that spins so slowly you can probably count the blades while it's spinning, but still is able to keep our Sandy Bridge G processor cool enough to run during all of our GPU testing. They also have the Epic Audio what do they call this here? It's the
headphone amplifier, isn't it?
Yeah, so they call it a studio-grade processing technology and a custom-designed solution intended for PCs, headphone to audio output, and microphone input. Unique technology harmonically brings audio to life without adding gain to deliver audio that's more balanced, more articulated, and simply put, better sounding. Now, when I tested it, it did sound better. I'm not a huge audiophile, so I can't really sit there and kind of define what it was about what it sounded better with, but it's something you can try yourself. You've got the on and off, and it sounded better. I don't know how else to say it than that, because it's all happening after the fact. You actually you take the audio header output off of the motherboard, and that cable goes into this Epic Audio device, and then the same pin out, goes through all the processing, and then it's pin out up to the front panel connector. So it's actually, if you plug your speakers into the back of your computer, you're not getting the benefit of this technology. It's only if you're using headphones through that headphone jack on the top of the computer, and only if you're using a microphone through that microphone jack on the top of the computer. So there's a little bit of a downfall there, but it definitely sounded good. Like
Was
I said,
it a more expansive sound field?
Yeah.
Did vocals really come through?
They just shined like crystal or something. Something like that. It was nice, and it's a nice addition. The system build quality was nice. Obviously, cable routing, all that kind of stuff was pristine. The performance, like I said, was out of the park. They did have a pair of Corsair Force GT 120 gig SSDs running in a RAID 0. They had a Corsair AX1200 professional series power supply, which was necessary under full load, playing going through the 3D Mark 11, playing Metro 2033. This system pulled over 1,000 watts, like 1,053 watts from the wall. So if you're looking for why people still make 1,200 watt power supplies, this is why people still make 1,200 watt power supplies. Pretty impressive. A very good system. I encourage everybody to go check it out, our review, for pictures and all that kind of stuff. And I just realized there's an error in the last part of the article. Interesting. The award image got replaced with a picture from Cinebench. Anyway, something else that came out this week, Alan is going to talk to us about. This is might surprise people. We haven't heard from Western Digital in a while. This is a brand new Velociraptor. We've gone from, what was the first one? 36 gigs to 74 to 150 to 300 to 600. Now we're up to a 1 terabyte, 10,000 RPM spinning disk. Tell me why I should buy all these.
Well, it's not. I mean, it is an improvement, obviously. But I hate to say it, it's just another incremental improvement, really. From the 300 to the 600 and now to the 1 terabyte, it's basically the same kind of jump. It is a better performing drive. It's got higher areal density. It just keeps going up and up. This is the first spinning hard drive we've seen so far that does 200 meg per second at its peak, which is pretty damn fast for, a hard drive, right? Usually they have a hard time even breaking 150 meg per second, which is why we used to joke about, it was kind of silly that they had serial ATA 6 gigabit now when the hard drive had a hard time beating serial ATA 1.5 gigabit.
Right.
Which is actually, 2 generations ago. So it's good to see it's actually using serial ATA 3 speeds, at least. Caching performance was even faster. It has 64 meg of cache, so it's a doubling of the cache. It was, for cache performance, and this is something that was hard to put, it was actually hard to quantify this with numbers to actually word it into the article, but the cache performance started to look sort of like high-end solid-state drive performance. Usually hard drives just skimp on that, right? They don't care about the processing, like how fast the processing is. just because it's a hard drive, right? It's not going to, how fast do you really need your cache to be? It's already worlds faster than the disk itself. But I saw some, it looked pretty decent when you ran like a Atto benchmark, which is really not a good thing for solid state drives. It's not as consistent as I would like. But some of those numbers looked sort of like solid state drive-ish. But again, Atto only tests a very small test file and everything. So that's a silly thing to, say that the hard drive was actually that fast. But on the whole, it's basically identical to the 600 gig drive, makes the same kind of noise. The power consumption is similar. Idle power consumption is a tiny bit less, but it's not so you'd get that over the 600 just for that reason. And performance is just, that next increment up. It was pretty visible in a lot of those benches that we ran, where you can just see the 300 versus the 600 versus the 1 terabyte. I ended up rebenching everything, actually, for this review, because a lot of those drives weren't tested under the native 6 gigabit Intel controller. And previously, we were not testing under Marvell intentionally, because back when Western Digital came out with like the 1 terabyte black edition drive, their first 6 gigabit drive, we saw that it actually performed worse under Marvell, the 6 gigabit Marvell, than it did under the 3 gigabit Intel. So we just sort of had to reevaluate the whole round under the new test bed, under the Sandy Bridge. But yeah, it's a real good drive, 5-year warranty, meets all those checkbox wickets that Western Digital is good for that type of a drive. It's really high end, right? It's meant to be sort of a professional thing. Yeah, I mean, I was happy with it as a hard drive, but realized it's hard to sell this as an OS replacement drive, right?
Really? I see. I would have thought. What about the cost per gig compared to SSDs? Is it fall squarely between SSD and kind of your traditional 2 terabyte hard drive, or?
Did we lose him?
Well, let's see. The MSRP's. No, I'm here. The MSRP is like 30 cents a gig on this one. So, it's still high compared to a hard drive, right? You buy a 2 terabyte Caviar Green, it's going to be cheaper, but, it is a faster drive, right? But if you're just doing nothing but like sequential reads and writes, or you're just doing backups to the thing or something like that, this is not really the way to go if you're trying to use it for like an OS, right? I'm still, even as good as this is, I don't think it replaces. I don't think no one's going to go from an SSD to this.
Well, sure. No. I think that's. I don't want to say it's pretty obvious, but I would say. So for our CPU test bed, or GPU test bed especially, we haven't used an SSD because we need to have a lot of games and test applications, that kind of stuff, just kind of always loaded and ready to go on this system. Right. In the kind of cheaper, low-cost SSDs, the 120 to 160 gig drives, we use Intel 160 gig X25 MG2 still, and those get pretty close to full. This seems more compelling to me. Like when I saw, burst up to like 400 and something megabytes and that kind of stuff as well. I don't know. I guess I felt a little bit more upbeat about this than you did. I still think SSDs are better. But I don't know if there's maybe some credibility to the idea of, if you're a content creator, that this might be more useful.
Or if you're running a server or a database function. I mean, this thing was incredible when your queue depth got really deep, Alan.
Yes, it did scale up even higher than any other spinning disk that we've tested. But realize that those IOs per second, if you look at the absolute number that it's hitting, I had to leave the SSD off of the graph. I actually caveated, I introduced the IOs per second page with the graph with an Intel X25M 160 gig model, actually the same one Ryan's running. I left it on there, and I put that as the first picture just to sort of show. And so if you have an SSD doing those same kind of workloads, yes, you only have 160 gig or whatever the capacity is, but it's it basically makes the drives like the axis, all of them. So as good as they are and as high as they were scaling, they're at the bottom when you have an SSD on that same chart. Unfortunately, it's just it's that any kind of a random access mixed workload kind of thing. It just solid state just walks all over something that has to seek and wait for wait milliseconds for the data to reach the head. So it's as good as you can make a hard drive, even if the seek time was instant, you still have rotation. You still have there's still wait times that are still worlds longer than a solid state drive. But if you have so much data and you're limited on how much you can spend, yes, this is obviously the way to go. If your solid state drive is out of your realm of what you can afford, really, for how much space you need. But that's really the only case anymore. There was some good comments on this piece. There were some hold on a second. All right, there were some good comments in the review where people were talking about, well, what if I use this as my SSD as the small OS drive, my other kind of larger scratch stuff? And I would say, yeah, that's a good idea there too. But that assumes that you can afford the SSD and the Velociraptor. So
yeah, this would make an awesome game drive. I mean, I use a Caviar Black 1 terabyte, and works good as it is. But boy, swapping in loading levels and getting a game going, this would kind of be it'd be a pretty significant step. And certainly this is probably something a lot of enthusiasts are looking at. And me running a 3-drive system, a slow data drive, a decent sized game drive that's quicker than an SSD for OS. I mean, that kind of fits the bill for just the basic user that I am.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how these are kind of received and how they sell, because I really think it could go either way. I'm really I thought the 600 gig Velociraptor did a really good job of kind of keeping high-speed hard drives still relevant in a lot of people's minds. We use 600 gig Velociraptors here in like a RAID 5 array on our editing rigs, video editing rigs for a while, just because of that. We could get significantly better performance than your standard hard drive and significantly better cost per dollar, or capacity per dollar than you could with SSDs. Now, SSDs have continued to come down, so when we rebuild it, or when we did, we were definitely using SSDs for that. But I don't know if maybe the 1 terabyte model maybe kind of makes this look a little bit better. We'll see. Another review that we posted up is not a big surprise for people. We took a look at the Galaxy branded GeForce GTX 680. Not much is different here. In fact, nothing really is different here than the reference card that we reviewed a few weeks ago now, except that this one has Galaxy branding, and you can actually purchase this one, whereas you can't actually purchase the reference cards. Performance is pretty much identical, which is great. GTX 680 is still the best performing graphics card in the market. It's still the most power efficient high-end graphics card in the market. It's also still the hardest to find video card in the market as well. I don't think anything has changed. Actually, let me go to the last page of the article to my Newegg links here. Handy and convenient, so I can see if there's anything in stock. And no. And the more unfortunate part is I'm actually seeing prices. Those are actually overclocked models too. So they're still listed at $499.99, which is great if you can find them. When I asked Nvidia about it, rather, they said that they were just seeing much higher demand than they expected, and that they recommended that if consumers really wanted one, that they sign up for these auto notifies that Newegg and Amazon, those kind of guys, offer, so that you get emailed as soon as there's some in stock. That's a valid answer, I guess. It's kind of a shitty answer. It's not great. Like, nobody wants to have to fight other people to get their video cards that they want.
Well, speak for yourself.
I am disappointed. The impressions we got were that stock was going to be, and they expected to sell out at launch time, but then they expected to see another big wave in the first week of April. We never really saw it. What we saw instead was these little trickles of the GTX 680. And in the meantime, what we'll talk about later, AMD's dropped prices, making their stuff way more compelling again. And now NVIDIA is at the point where, Jeremy has to make these decisions for our hardware leaderboard for our super high-end system. And we kind of go by the rule of thumb. If it's not in stock, we tend to not pick it, Nope. Sometimes if it's, off and on every couple of days, but it seems to be pretty consistently not in stock now. So it's really hard to select a GTX 680 when I can't tell people that they can actually go out and buy it reliably.
I kind of wonder with AMD dropping the price when they did, if they don't in fact know that there's large shipments of these chips finally starting to reach the partners, so they can integrate them in their own designs and whatnot. Because if something was not available, why would you lower your prices?
Yes, and that was the argument.
Business plan on hoping that they're never going to be in stock.
That was the decision, or that was the thought I had when the initial GTX 680 launch happened, was that AMD they might not just guess. They have a pretty good idea. I think both sides have a pretty good idea of what the stock is of the other one and what they see coming down the pipeline the next few weeks. They all get manufactured at the same place. Don't forget this. So I think it's very possible that AMD said, well, they're not going to have stock for a month. There's no point in us dropping our price for a month. And maybe that's indicative of good news for people who want to buy these NVIDIA cards. We'll talk a little bit more about it in the news section because there's a couple of stories in that field that I want to hit on. The only other thing I'll say with this Galaxy review is I have got my hands on 4 different GTX 680s now. 2 reference cards, a Galaxy and another additional one. And one of the worries and one of the things that AMD has kind of been talking about with the GTX 680 is the whole idea of GPU boost, this kind of variable clock frequency, and that there's going to be variance in terms of the performance of one GPU to the next. That's still the case, and that's still possible. It's still possibly going to be a problem. And I've tested 4 GPUs. That's nowhere near a high enough sample size, but I haven't really seen any kind of differences card to card. Right. And that's what I think people that are worried about the technology are most worried about, is that the fact that, they'd be pissed if they got a card that only clocked up to, 1065, but Josh got a card that clocked up to 1165, but they both paid $499 for it. And that's still probably going to happen in some cases, but I can't say it for sure. I haven't seen it yet. I don't want to say I don't think it's going to happen because, like I said, I've only tested 4 cards. And until we get a much larger sample size, until every vendor that sells these sends me 10 each, I won't be able to know for sure, I guess is what I'm telling you.
And, so better share those around.
After I test them, I have no problem with that. After I test all 10 from every vendor, I'll give, like 1 to Ken and 1 to eBay, and I'll do aftermarket Amazon sales for just like $150, $200 over the retail cost. It's pretty generous, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, check out that review. It's a good kind of refresher. It's kind of like a reminder that, hey, the GTX 680 exists. You can't buy it, but it exists. We promise sometimes reviewers get them. I don't know if that makes people feel any better.
So you're going to put NVIDIA's feet to the fire, say, I thought we were done with paper launches.
So I'm going to see them very soon.
Charlie D on them?
Yeah, no. Yeah. No. I'm going to see them in person very soon.
If you know what I mean.
So that they will, basically I'm going to have all of the stories they told me in email, and I'm going to say, hey, fix it. So, because I hate recommending products. I hate it. Recommending products people can't buy. It totally defeats the purpose of what we do. Unless it's not going to be on, like with the Mars 2. First of all, I didn't recommend that because it was too damn expensive. But I was like, there's only going to be 500 of them, so don't expect to find them for very long. Oh well, that's all right. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back and talk about several news items that happened over the week, and we'll be right back. All right, thank you very much for that. Let's talk. We've got a bunch of stuff to get through here. Let's not dwell on anything too drastically long. Alan, are you still with us?
Yep.
You want to talk to us about the Intel 910 series Enterprise PCI Express SSD? Is this the first PCIe SSD from Intel?
Yes, it is. And let's see, I'm shooting from the hip on all the specs because they're from memory, and I'm not going to even test this wireless to try to pull the page up. Okay, so PCI Express by 8 card, I believe, 2.0 by 8. It's a LSI-based non-RAID SAS controller that's connected to four 200 gig channels worth of, let's see. Again, this is not an Intel chip for that part either. It's, I believe, the Hitachi controller modified by Intel and connected to a bunch of endurance technology Intel MLC NAND flash. Okay, so here are the two different flavors. One's 400 gig, which is basically 2 channels instead of 4, and then you have the 800 gig model. Those are the only 2 for starters. I'm not sure where they plan on going with this, if they're, maybe going to make a bigger one, larger card somewhere down the line. This card uses the full by 16 PCIe connector spec, meaning it's drawing like all the power off of all the possible power pins. And the PCIe spec only gives you 25 watts if you're using that kind of card, right? That's the same reason video cards need the external power connectors and whatnot, right? This card not, what do you call it? It doesn't have like an extra power connector. It just draws whatever it draws from the port. It's a half-height card. So limited to 25 watts, its write speeds are not very similar to its on the reads. 1 gigabyte per second max on the writes, sequential. IOs per second were pretty dang high. It was like 80, crazy high number like that. But the writes not so much. It's like 75 or 8,000. But basically anything that has to do with the writes being slower than the reads is based on that 25 watt limit. So through the control panel software that Intel is going to provide with this card, they give you a little tweak setting, software switch you can throw. It lets the card draw up to 28 watts. It's assuming, I guess, server class motherboards can give you a little extra juice and still be sort of within the spec. If you do that, you get another 50% gain on the writes. So it meets the reads basically halfway. You end up with like 1.5 gigs per second and like 130,000 IOs per second on the writes. So my little pet peeve rears its head again. This card in the full form, like 800 gig worth, should probably not be bootable with the way they have it laid out. That's because it's 4 SAS controllers, host OS that you're running. There's no way to tell the card to RAID them together on the other end. So that's good from an IOs per second standpoint, because a lot of those RAID solutions are the bottleneck if you try to RAID together some really fast SSD type devices. So it's good that they went with the individual channels, but now you have to worry about the OS RAIDing them together, and you can't boot from it all 800 gig. You can probably boot from one of the 200 gig units and then use the other 3 as a RAID or some variation thereof. But we won't know that until we're actually testing it. But yeah, I'm impressed with the specs. I'm disappointed a little bit by the bootability thing, but this is really meant to be pure enterprise. Intel makes no qualms about no kind of caveats about that at all. They're thought out look, this is enterprise. This is an 800 gigabyte drive that you could write 10 times the capacity to for every day of the 5-year warranty, and you have not burnt out the flash. Think
That's
about
good.
That.
So that's good for gameplay, right?
No, but this is definitely serious high end stuff. Compared to Fusion IO, yes, they're supposed to be enterprise, and that's their argument for not being bootable. But they make a gaming product, right? They make the IO Extreme and stuff, and they try to market that as to end users, like consumer-ish kind of thing. And it's not a bootable card, so I can't give Fusion IO the pass. But Intel, they have 20 other solid-state drive models that are bootable, and they're cheaper. Yeah. Speaking of cheaper, though, the cost of this board is actually much lower than anything from Fusion IO. It's let's see, did I do dollar per gig? Basically, it was an 800 gig card that was less than half the cost of the 160 gig card from Fusion IO.
So that's good. It's still not cheap. Like when Josh said this would be a good card for gaming, that's still not great. The 800 gig card is $3,859.
Yep.
So I want one of these for our video recording rig. That'd be good.
You're going to have to fire all of us to be able to pay for that.
That's still not going to be enough.
And the other important part of this, we're not going to know until we actually test it, is that I hate to say it, you have to rely on software RAID to tie the 4 SCSI ones together.
Oh, really?
That's what your solution's going to have to be. The Intel's idea of scalability for this is that just like devices to whatever your host operating system is, right? So if you had, now realize if you have a server rack that's meant for enterprise storage purposes, that rack, chances are, is doing nothing but storage. So it's okay for that rack to have the overhead, you know, to assume that the CPU overhead is meant for storage purposes, right? And ideally you would just take one of those crazy server class motherboards that have like 8 PCIe 2.0 slots in them, and you would populate all 8 with those cards, and then you would have, you know, 4 times 8, 200 gigabyte SCSI devices to RAID as you wish on the software side.
Right.
So, you know, it sort of makes sense, but there are obviously, you know, disadvantages from the aspect of, you know, it's not as a simple, elegant kind of a thing, right? It's simplistic in one way, but you sort of make that trade-off where, you know, like an OCZ R4, that thing just shows up as a 1.6 terabyte unit, right? I mean, everything's just there. It's all together. You know, it scales way up, and ideally you could just plug it in, install a really simple driver, and you just use it. This is the same thing, except that it shows up as 4 devices. So.
Gotcha. So let's move on from one batshit crazy idea to another and talk with Jeremy about, so we heard all this stuff about Valve entering the hardware world. We thought they were going to build a computer. It turns out they're going to make that thing that John Carmack really wanted, which is like a wearable display or input device. What are you looking at here, Jeremy?
Well, from the sounds of it, it's something similar to the Google glasses that we saw not too long ago, the augmented reality glasses. And really, they sort of hedged what they're going to say about this apart from its R&D project. So, you know, it's not that Steam glasses are going to be announced coming up at E3 or anything like that. On the other hand, what they are looking for is something very wearable, something very portable, and probably something you would game on, one would suspect. So this does, of course, add the question of, okay, if you can match the sort of glasses aspect of the Google program, how exactly do you run the input? It's going to be a little bit interesting to see if people are going to be, you know, typing on a wrist or blinking furiously. We've got eye tracking, which has gotten very, very good, and there's been a few products out where people have tried gaming with it and, you know, met with mixed success. It's a little hard to do Twitch shooters when you're doing that. On the other hand, hey, this is nice to know that all of these rumors that we've been hearing about Valve starting to work on hardware are actually true. So we'll see. And, you know, maybe Valve and TV will get together. You'll be able to stream TV via Steam. Interesting to see where they go with that.
Josh, you want to talk to us about the new promotion that AMD started? We talked about a price drop, but they're not only going to do a price drop, but they're going to give us some crap, too.
We like crap. Admit it. You know, as we were talking about earlier, and let me get this linked up there, AMD has finally dropped down their prices of their 7900 cards, and it was much needed because at $549, the 7970 was getting spanked around pretty heavily by the GTX 680, which was $499. Interestingly enough, there was no real kind of competition at the $449 space at the $79.50, but still for only $50 more, you got quite a bit more performance. So to sweeten the deal, AMD has dropped the prices. Now you can get, I believe, the $79.50 for $399. Yeah, $399. Yep. And the $79.70 is now $479. So those of you who bought one of these HD 7970s for $549 last week are obviously a bit disappointed at the 70 some odd dollars that you missed out on. And not only that,
yeah, that sucks.
But you get 3 games. Dirt Showdown, which is the next upcoming Dirt title. It's going to be a bit more arcadey, apparently.
Yeah,
but still based on that same engine and whatnot. Should be a fun title, if not somewhat challenging. Nexuiz,
no idea.
I don't know. It's some kind of online arcade based.
Looks like Tron with guns. I don't know. I'm just looking at the tiny screenshot.
Explosions. And finally, Deus Ex Human Revolution plus the DLC. Usually about $29 or $39 in retail, and they're giving you those 3 titles for free for a limited time if you buy one of their cards for either $399 or $479. So
that's a $50 price drop on the $79.50 and a $70 price drop on the $79.70. Actually, it's more like a $50 one because prices were kind of already down in the $529, $539 range before this happened. Still
75 to $100 worth of games for free thrown in.
Yeah,
can't beat that with a stick.
Well, no, that's pretty good.
And
I think it makes a good point, a good argument for AMD over the GTX 680. Now, the GTX 680 isn't the runaway winner anymore. Now that you can save $20 and get some pretty sweet software in the deal, and you can buy it because it's available, right?
It is available.
Important. You can actually hit a button and purchase it, and they will ship it to your door, which is not the case with the GTX 680 still today. So that's good news, I guess, unless you bought it 2 weeks ago. Sorry about that.
Yeah, like the guys who bought the MSI Lightning 7970 for $599, and it's now $539, if not cheaper.
Hey, maybe you're still inside your return policy.
Hey, so if I return MSI this review card, they'll just send me $70, right?
Yeah, but that sounds like a bad deal for you. Let's talk with Alan again. Intel announcing the solid-state drive 330 series. They appear to be on a roll. This is better than the 320 and the 310, right? It's higher. It's more number.
Bigger is better.
And less Alan.
Oh, we dropped Alan?
Oh.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about it. It's under $1.50 per gigabyte. It's going up. It's got 60 gig, 120 gig, 180 gig models.
Wait, so you said it's $1.50 a gig?
Yeah.
That's not that great.
This is a SandForce-based drive, but it's lower cost. It's 25 nanometer flash still, 500 megabytes read, 450 writes. These are all up to amounts, of course. And it's kind of like their low-cost version. Does it say SandForce? Maybe it's Marvell. I don't know. Maybe it's IndieLinks. Maybe they're the same thing.
Maybe.
So this is actually great.
It's a detuned SandForce.
Okay, all right. But it's significantly lower price than the 520 series, which is also SandForce, right? Yeah, the 520 is SandForce. So I'm for it, right? This is it's at a 6 gig as well. Because I think at the prices that they're listing here, this is pretty compelling. Where's the full price?
Not really, because
it's $90 for a 60 gig, $150 for a 120, and $234 for a 180. Which is essentially the only really, really good deal of the bunch.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, because if you that OCZ Agility 3 240 gig drive is $230
even.
No, $230.
Okay.
Wait, say that again.
So The OCZ Agility 3 that I bought the other day, after everything's said and done, it's $230 for a 240 gig drive.
Oh, after rebates and that kind of stuff?
Specialist. Pardon? Yeah, even before rebates, it's like $279 for 240 gig.
Okay,
so
that's
you're
pretty good.
Far off from the Intel 180 gig, but you get an extra 60 gigs, for free. For free?
Sure.
Now these are MSR, these are
though,
press release prices, so they may be lower than that.
Yeah, and this will in some cases keep up with a 520. Not in the vast majority, of course, but it'll spank the pants off of the old 320s. So you are going to get something a little bit faster than the Agility 3. But on the same time, like you say, it's kind of hard to pass up a deal like that because you're not going to quite notice those extra couple of nanoseconds shaved off.
Agreed. So
the Samsung 830s are just so competitive in price. Not even funny.
And ridiculous in performance.
Oh, yeah, they're awesome.
You know what else is awesome? Do you know? Last week. What is today?
11 o'clock at night there? 12? Midnight?
It is. Over the weekend, actually, if you stop by PC Perspective, you are treated to an extravagant event hosted by myself and JJ from ASUS. Taking a look at
that's dynamite. No,
no. But we took a look at essentially every Z77 motherboard ever from ASUS, at least. Like literally, I think it was we had 3, 5, 9 ASUS Z77 motherboards on display. So JJ came out much like we did with our GTX 680 live review with Tom Peterson from Nvidia. JJ and JJ from ASUS came out, talked with us, wanted to describe what was new in the Z77 chipset, wanted to talk about the new features they were putting into their motherboards. And we took questions from the audience. We ended up giving away a lot of stuff, surprisingly. I think we gave away a GTX 560 Ti 448 plus a sound card. We gave away 2 P8 Z77V Pros. We gave away a WS board. Something else. Wasn't there one other one too? There was 4 packages. I don't know. He gave away a lot of stuff. JJ is a lot of fun. And he is, even more importantly, incredibly knowledgeable about not only their products, but the ideas behind them as well, which is pretty rare in this industry where you find somebody that's both technically knowledgeable and capable of having an intelligent conversation with human beings. So we really enjoyed having him in there. If you missed the live event where you guys got to interact and answer questions for prizes and questions and all that kind of stuff, if you go to our homepage, pcper.com, you will see the PC Perspective live review recap ASUS Z77 motherboards. And there are 2 videos. One of them is like 90 minutes and one of them is like 65 or 70 minutes. In the first one, we go through all the different motherboards, talk about what features are different, how the boards differentiate, all the way from the basic P8 Z77V standard through the Pro, Deluxe. We went through the Mini ITX Z77 motherboard, the Micro ATX Z77 motherboard, and we went through the Maximus 5 Gene, the Sabertooth, and the workstation board, and we even got a little preview of the Maximus 5 Formula motherboard. And then in the second video, we actually go through all the features that the ASUS motherboards bring, the Wi-Fi Go technology, the new fan controller software. What else do we look at?
With so many fans.
Glowy
USB 3.0 boost, which kind of initiates a SCSI version of USB 3 protocol that is not enabled by default. Some other really cool stuff. We also did some demos offline that we won't be able to show you until the Ivy Bridge launch that look at overclocking and a couple of other features we weren't allowed to talk about yet. We also did detail, this is kind of funny, we talked about on all these motherboards, there's a header called TB header, and it's a Thunderbolt header. So all these motherboards are going to support Thunderbolt, even though the controller is not on board. You have to buy a separate add-in card with the controller, but it has a pass-through so that you can still support display output for it.
That's good because, I would have been really afraid by a tuberculosis header.
I would not have. Don't prick your finger on that because that is bad news.
Bad news.
And then, interestingly, today, several news outlets decided that they heard from their sources that the TB header on the motherboards was for Thunderbolt through an add-in card. I was like, that's weird. I wonder where they heard that. Maybe it's from ASUS on our video. But it was a really cool event. We're really glad they came out. It was a lot of fun, and I think very, very, very informative. And those videos will be available from today onward, and then on the Ivy Bridge launch timeframe, we're going to have several more videos, and these videos kind of cut up in a way so we can kind of link one to every place that we're at in the article. So check that out. That was a lot of fun, and I think we'll have another one of those maybe before the end of the month for another big product release. We will see. Do we ever get Alan back? Because if not, we're just gonna...
He says he did.
I am here.
Hey, look, somebody did Instagram on his webcam.
What?
It's like you're in the olden times.
I know, right? It's so awesome.
Do you think you have the capability to talk to us for a minute, Alan?
Sure. What did I miss?
Well, we talked about the 330 already, so I was going to have you see if you wanted to talk about how awesome the Fusion IOFX is.
Okay, so IOFX is, well, let's just compare it to that Intel drive we were just talking about, shall we?
Let's.
Sure. Yes.
See, here's what I see as backwards for this. They're marketing this as a workstation board, right? So if you have a workstation machine, you're doing video editing, you're doing something similar to what the kind of stuff Ryan does, right, Ryan? You know, that kind of stuff?
Yes.
Okay.
Trust me, I know.
Here's the problem. Now, where you might have some software RAID overhead by using the Intel unit, this unit in a workstation, it's going to rob you of CPU because the CPU overhead for a Fusion IO product is actually probably more than you would have for just software rating those 4 200 gig drives together on the Intel board. And that's because the Fusion IO, the actual controller, is actually very dumb. It doesn't have any intelligence to it whatsoever. All of the intelligence in the controller, wear leveling, all that stuff, is all handled on the Windows side. So not only would you be having to deal with RAID type stuff, you would have to deal with everything. Like the Fusion IO driver handles everything on Windows side. So it's nice that it has a fan on it, which is good because if you put that Intel 910 in a workstation type machine, you would need a fan blowing over it because at 25 watts during writes, that card would cook with just minimal inside your PC kind of cooling, right? So you would need
a challenge.
Sounds like a rack mount.
Well, yeah, so the 910 assumes that your rack mount, you're like a 2U rack mount server chassis, and those have plenty of airflow across them, right? So they're going to keep everything cool. Whereas this, yes, it has a fan on it, so you can mount it on a workstation, but why would you do that when it's going to rob you of CPU while it's using the device? So that's I don't know. It's like 6 in one and half a dozen in the other. And then, okay, so what's the last thing to look at? The price, right? $2,500. How much capacity do you get? 420 gig.
420 gigs. That's
so that
close.
That costs more than the 400 gig Intel 910, right?
Yeah.
Hey, but Woz licked that Fusion IO controller.
Yeah. Okay.
That's got to be worth some money.
Listen, I like Woz, but I don't think I'm the only
person. It's his 35th birthday today. Well, at least, for the Apple II.
Well, I don't think I'm the only person that gets the feeling that Fusion IO just pulls him out of the back closet when they want to throw his name on something. I'm serious. I don't think he's actively in development on these products.
No. I'm sure he's not. Let's not. I don't want to get into that part.
Right.
I don't really care. It doesn't really matter. I don't really care who develops as long as it's a good product or not. So, okay. I tell you what, it does have going for it. It's cooler looking than the Intel one.
That's true.
with the red paint and the fan and the little.
It's like, tailoring more towards But okay, so it's tailoring more towards what the crazy, really high-end gamer that the 80 gig IOFX is not good enough for, so they're going to want to use this one instead, right? But
you think a gamer's going to buy this?
To burn.
But it's possible if you were really crazy, the kind of gamers that throw crazy money at their system.
We don't call those people crazy. We call those people stupid.
No, professional gamers.
Really? They pay our bills.
I hope nobody buys this card to accelerate their Battlefield 3 performance.
Well, okay.
Ever.
So I know and I agree with you, but realize that people were buying a $700 IOFX to do just that.
Were they, or did they just put a fatality name on it, hoping they could get 3 or 4 guys to do it?
I think you're right there too, because that board wasn't bootable either. So you had to have your OS on something else and then just put your games on that. And it was only 80 gigabytes at the time. It was like, that's a joke, right? That's like 4 or 5 games.
No, trust me. I know.
Yeah. So, and it wasn't bootable, right? So this one is not bootable. If I was building a high-end workstation machine and I spent $2,500 on the solid state storage, I would want to be able to boot from it. If it was a workstation, right?
I think for that type of user, actually, it's probably less a requirement than you might think. I think those high-end applications, rendering, video editing, that kind of thing, are probably used to using non-boot drives for that type of stuff.
Sure,
would be my guess. Now, it doesn't make it easier by any means, but it just seems that I think it's more the norm than maybe we're letting it on to be. There's a reason why those settings exist inside Adobe Premiere and Lightwave and 3D Studio Max and that kind of stuff.
And I guess these days it's not, since the prices have come down, and you're able to get bigger capacities, it's not too far stretched for a person to spend. You're already spending $2,500 here. Spend the extra couple $100 on 160 gig SSD for your C drive, I guess. Right?
Yeah. I don't know. Oh well. All right. Jeremy, you want to tell me about all the versions of Windows 8 that I'm going to have to buy?
They've decided not to go the Baskin Robbins way this time, where you have so many different flavors that you have to keep track of. You've got 4 SKUs, which we're going to be, familiar with. Windows 8, which is going to be probably a little bit better than the home version, but at least, it's going to be the basic version, a little bit cheaper. You're going to have Windows 8 Pro, which is going to fill what we've gotten used to with the Ultimate Edition, and also adds one of the features you've only ever seen in the Ultimate Edition, which is the ability to switch native languages on the fly. You're going to
Why is that? Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Why is that useful?
Oh, sorry, time's up. Because some insane people decide that they suddenly have to type in Chinese traditional font.
Like I'm tired of reading English, German. Right, and they just want to make sure that can happen without a reboot?
I have run into that. Honestly, I have run into that from someone who's got, a survey that's being translated from another country. They pop it in, and Windows natively does not deal with that font. It just don't freaking know it. Can't spell check it. Does not nothing.
All right.
It draws weird little, control boxes and such.
I don't deal with the corporate world enough, so I bow to your wisdom on this. It just seems like if that's the difference, I was like, nope.
Pretty much, and that's why it is a professional edition.
Yeah.
How dare you, home user, want to use our professional edition software? You do not understand. But there'll also be an enterprise version, which is going to be Windows 8 Pro, and for the most part, I think it's just going to support volume licensing. There might be some IT management stuff in there, but it's not going to be enabled by default. Mostly what you're looking at is these things will support volume licenses. And then you're going to have Worm, because that has to be the best name for it, which is Windows on ARM, Windows RT. which I still think should be Worm. And that's going to be the Windows 8 that runs natively on ARM processors that we've been looking at, with anticipation, especially those of us who have to deal with the server world, and they're suddenly thinking that, wait, so I can just stack umpteen billion ARM processors together, build this, what used to be called like a supercomputer, put it in a 2U rack or a 2U rack mount server, and just go? This is interesting. So you're only going to have to deal with 4 different flavors. It's going to be nice. And, for the most part, I think it's a good step. Because honestly, it was getting a little bit ridiculous with Windows 7. The only real question is Windows Media Center. Now, we're not quite sure where exactly that's going to fit in. Is it going to be included in sort of the Pro versions? Are you going to have some sort of a separate add-in which you can purchase? Overall, it's a little bit interesting as to how they're going for it, because Windows Media Center is a very home user type thing. And as far as we know right now, you're looking at the only Pro is the only one that's going to do it. So you're going to have to fork over money at the original purchase to get the professional version. And then you may even have to pay to get this add-on to get Windows Media Center, which should be the trimmed down version, which is running on the HTPC. On the other hand, we'll see. It should be interesting, and thankfully you're not going to have to keep track of 18 different flavors.
I can totally appreciate that. Josh,
me,
yeah, I just haven't heard your voice in a while. I was really melancholy about it. Now, Jeremy actually posted this news piece, but I thought it was interesting. You guys can both sum this up for me if you want. It's possible that there are companies now just finally trying to find somebody besides TSMC to do 28 nanometer stuff, in particular Nvidia and Qualcomm, probably the 2 most demanding customers of TSMC at this point.
That is correct. DigiTimes had posted this information, and apparently a lot of people are not too happy with TSMC. 28 nanometer it's a pretty big jump. They introduced HKMG, or high K metal gate. A couple other technologies in there. It's a gate last process. Other people in the industry are looking more at gate first. And, at least with Nvidia, they've been unhappy with how things have gone, because I really do believe the meat of their production on the GK104, or otherwise known as the GTX 680, happened right before they had the big shutdown of the 28 nanometer line at TSMC that lasted like a month and a half. So that's another big reason why we have not seen a replenishment of these 28 nanometer parts from Nvidia. The stuff that was kind of in line and ready to be almost sent to the guys who prepare the dies and mount them on the substrates. All that just suddenly stopped, and so they obviously are displeased with TSMC for doing this, and are showing that by shopping around to Global Foundries and Samsung to seeing if they have foundry space open at the 28 nanometer node. Of course, these are going to be kind of different products, and they're going to have to do a lot of redesign, because Global Foundries in this case is a gate first 28 nanometer HKMG, and I'm not entirely sure what Samsung is. It might be a gate last, but still the differences in the technology between TSMC and Samsung are extreme enough that you need to, pretty much totally redesign the entire part. Now, it's not going to be redesigned from scratch, but you're going to have to adjust to the different rules and the different specifications of the process, and that's going to, affect things like timings, TDPs and whatnot. That these are not simple issues that you can get around. It's going to take man hours. It's going to take money, and so right now they're trying to push TSMC into really throwing the money in and improving their 28 nanometer process, so things go a little bit smoother. But they're also hedging their bets and saying, hey, what if some of these problems that they're having just are going to keep going for the next 6 to 8 months? Why don't we look at these other manufacturers, these other foundry partners that could potentially give us a line space that will be around the same price point, but will be a little bit more, I would say, reliable than what we have seen so far from TSMC. Jeremy?
Well, On the other hand, Digitimes was also saying that maybe we're being a little bit harsh on TSMC. Like you say, they did have a big shutdown, but as far as money goes, the 28 nanometer node is going insane. It's usually takes them about 3 or 4 quarters to ramp up to beyond 1% of the revenue coming in being from a new process. In this case, they've jumped from 1% to 5% in a single quarter. So obviously there are 6800s out there and they're being bought or given to reviewers, or sorry, 680s. So they're being bought. And, you know, the thing is that maybe we were expecting this huge glut of processors to come out on the 28 nanometer node when it first arrived, whereas NVIDIA sort of slacking off a little bit and not putting in big orders for it because it's a brand new process. There's a lot of optimizations that have to go. Those first bunch of chips that come off the assembly line cost a lot more to make than the ones a further bit down the road. So it is ramping up. And then, of course, there is no question about that. You can't say that there's anything in specific wrong about TSMC's 28 nanometer process. As we're saying, you can buy Southern Islands GPUs right now. It's, you know, and they're on the same process. They're from the same fab. So it's specific issues, and it may just well be that the volume has not been booked in because you've got 95% capacity coming up this year on TSMC's new node. It's, you know, that's a significant chunk for a fab that usually dreams of hitting 90%, let alone 95% booked. And then you've got companies like, manufacturers like ARM, who've actually put in specific optimizations for TSMC's 28 nanometer, so that they're trying to draw the customers to TSMC. On the other hand, frankly, the fact of the matter is, you go to Newegg right now, you can't buy a new NVIDIA card. It's just not available. Hopefully they're coming in. We've seen the hint from AMD that suddenly they did drop the prices like people have been speculating for a while. So, you know, there could well be some supply coming in, hopefully not just for the boutique system builders that are already installing the card. And if you want the card, well, you got to buy the package around it, and that one's a little bit expensive. But it's going to be interesting to see, because you've got, at the same time as you've got companies leaving TSMC, you've got companies approaching them or trying to convince customers to go there. It's interesting, and as I did want to point out at the end, we've been beating up on TSMC for quite a while. It feels like, you know, since the 40 nanometer days. But do you remember trying to buy a Llano back at the end of the year? Global Foundries was having the same sort of supply problems. You switch processes, and yeah, it's not easy. It's a non-trivial task. It's going to take a while to get things going.
Yeah,
so
and you know, there's... Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just wrapping up.
Okay, you know, in the medical field, there's a saying, all bleeding eventually stops. And you can apply that however you would like, but it's a truism. And when we look at the manufacturing problems that we see with TSMC, Intel, whoever, eventually these things do get cleared up, because you throw enough people at it, you throw enough money at it, they do enough stopgap measures so that it actually works. I mean, you know, the physics is there, the science is there, the development is there. They know what is theoretically possible to what is practically possible to what you can actually make. And, I mean, they don't go out of their way in doing technologies that they say, well, this might work, but, boy, you know, if it does work, the upsides are absolutely phenomenal. Well, you know, if you use that thinking, you're going to be out of business very, very soon, because you spend billions of dollars, you have a process that you're hoping to utilize at 90 to 95% for the next 2 years. Next thing you know, it doesn't work at all. And so these guys are not dumb, and they certainly have done their homework. They've done their design. They've done their testing. These things do work. They just need to eventually put some more time in, and certainly 28 nanometers at TSMC is eventually going to be fine. When that point is, well, that's a very good question.
All right. That's good enough on that. Hey, I want you guys to know, while you guys are talking, I turned the air conditioning back on in here because it got hot, because of I've Wi-Fi enabled thermostat. Does that impress you guys?
I thought you were all hot and bothered about TSMC.
Well, yeah.
Are you using a Nest?
I am. I was not anymore. Of course, you guys are talking. That would be rude. I wouldn't do that. So we had one other bit of news. It's coming apparently. I don't really know what this is all about. Nvidia posted a picture on their Facebook page of. I'm not even sure it's a video card, to be completely honest with you. There's a picture on there. The subtext is "It's coming." People think it's a 670, maybe a 660. Some say a 690. Any thoughts?
Oh, it's obviously a next generation gaming NIC.
That's right. It's a killer NIC. Maybe it's super killer.
Updated the accelerator in the N-Force with the Ethernet, and now it's gonna do your laundry and butter your toast. It's coming.
And control your thermostat.
Yes.
Now we're talking. Yeah. So we'll know that soon. It's drawing a lot of attention. Obviously, this is a goal. Another graphics card. Who to guess? Another video card will be coming from Nvidia someplace.
Won't be coming from Nvidia?
Will sometime, someplace.
Someplace.
Sometime,
right.
someplace. So we never got Alan back, right? That's fine. That's okay. He was dragging us down. Let's get into our hardware, software picks of the week. I have a reverse pick. Does anybody know what this is? Does anybody show and tell time? Anybody know what I'm holding up?
It looks like a Cisco rebranded Linksys POS. And by that, I don't mean point of sale.
Yeah.
You are correct. But it's not, do you know what it is, though? It's not a switch. It's a Powerline AV networking adapter, specifically model number PL300. And let me tell you something about these devices. I own 6 of them because
You just won't learn, will you?
I used
Because
to
they're
own,
branded Cisco. Cisco doesn't make crap.
Exactly. It says Cisco on it. Cisco makes high quality networking gear. So I bought 4 of them initially because I wanted, you have to have one by your router. And I put one in my bedroom for the Sling box. I put one in the living room for the game consoles. And I put one downstairs in the basement for when I had a computer down in the basement when I wasn't allowed upstairs.
You suffered a traumatic brain injury and you bought 2 more.
No, what I suffered was the death of 2 of these devices.
And you bought more.
Actually, I think the first one died, and you can only buy them in pairs when I found them again. I was like, okay, fine, whatever, I'll have another backup. Well, it's a good thing I had a backup. As of today, I am down to 1 out of 6 working PL300 devices from Linksys. My Slingbox wasn't working this week, and I went home to investigate this morning, and noticed that the one by my Slingbox was still blinking and all pretty and stuff, and the one by my Switch was making a high-pitched squealing buzzing sound. Probably not.
Kind of like my cat when we shave. Never mind. I'm not going to go there.
Either way, it's bad news, right? You don't want your electronics to have high-pitched squealing sounds. So I'm now 5 for 6 on the death of these things. This exact thing. And what was even, when I bought 2 of them, when I bought the 2 replacements, I found out, like, I bought some that looked exactly like this on the website. They had a different model number, but I thought, that's fine. Turns out those 2 were incompatible with the 4 that I had bought previously, so I couldn't, like, mix the 2.
But the irony is they ironed out all the bugs in these other sets. So they don't burn out, right?
No, they died too. No. No, they died too. So don't buy any of this crap, I guess is what I'm telling you. I don't know what it is. Ken tried to make me feel better.
But power grid, man.
It might be.
Yeah.
It might be.
Reverberations of the banjos that's, causing these issues.
That could be.
Somebody's PSU is leaking dirty power back onto the net.
Dirty.
These are incredibly convenient when they work, and it's incredibly frustrating when they just suddenly die. Luckily, I found a review sample of some Powerline stuff that was sent to me like 3 years ago that I never opened, and was able to get stuff back up and running with a completely different brand. It'll probably die in 6 months too. Run Ethernet in your house, everybody. That's my suggestion for the week.
So are you going to use those as clay pigeons?
Yeah. Maybe I'll just throw them at people. Anytime I get a solicitor in the new office, I'm just going to throw them at. Yeah.
They're high-tech
Jeremy,
golf tees.
What do you got for us?
Well, if you haven't thrown out your old Walkman and it's just sort of sitting there gathering dust and you really wonder what you should be doing with it, you can actually turn this with a simple addition of a little audio jack into a magnetic credit card stripe reader. So any of you that, are convinced that, all the information on that little magnetic strip is just so secure and no one will be able to get it and, the chip protects me. Well, yeah, not so much. It can also be handy to grab stuff back if you want to build your own keycard locks. Although getting the 3.5 jack into a mechanical switch might be a little bit interesting. Maybe the Raspberry Pi can do it. You never know. But just seriously, if you're convinced that these magnetic stripes are secure, that's what it takes, is an old tape head and an audio jack.
Do you mean like this?
That's the one. Oh, did you get one of the actual dongle things?
This is the square device.
Yes,
they were free. This is how
this is a tearing down square.
Yeah, so when I go out of town with my friends and like I pay for the hotel and we're supposed to split it and they're like, oh, I'll send you a check later, and I go, nope, no, you won't. Give me a credit card. And I swipe that shit and I take their money right there. It's a great device.
And you can.
I've seen cab drivers use them and all kinds of stuff too. Josh, you're last today, so don't disappoint us. You don't have anybody to follow you up.
It's really late. I'm tired. I just can't do this anymore. You really?
No, I don't feel you. No, anyway. I changed my mind.
Finally. We talked about this earlier, seemingly ad nauseum. But I thought that buying one of these HD 7950s, namely the Asus DC2 version, for $409, you get the 3 games. You can overclock these very easily. It's now at a price that I would find pretty palatable. And they're available. And even though it's a triple slot card, which is a little bit disappointing, comes with plenty of stuff. It's got good performance. You're going to like what you get, except for the AMD drivers, which have kind of been a little cruddy lately, as Ken could attest. But anyway, still a good buy, and you can push through these issues. So order now. Operators are standing by.
Probably not.
Okay.
Alan didn't have anything in his list, so I'm assuming he didn't pick anything. That's fine by us.
He picked up reliable Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
No, he didn't. That was the problem.
He left it somewhere, that's for sure. Share this podcast with your friends, everybody. We really want you to tell people, spread the word about how much fun we have talking about computer hardware, and that's all. That's actually it. PCPer.com/podcast. Look, we make it really easy. PCPer.com/podcast. Or if it's easier to remember, it's PCPer.com/podcast. And then also make sure you check out PCPer.com/live, which is where we kind of host the video that we stream. There's a schedule on the right-hand side of the website now that lets you know of the upcoming events as soon as we know about them. So every week we've got at least the podcast and This Week in Computer Hardware on there, so that's good. Obviously you could find the website at other places, Facebook.com/PCPer. We love Facebook. Josh has all kinds of friends on Facebook. It's amazing.
I do.
Twitter.com/PCPer, gplus.to/PCPer. Those are all places, whatever your social media network of choice is, we are there spamming you with our stories. So if you want to know about the stuff we're going to talk about right away, those are the places to get a hold of us. That is going to wrap up the show for this week. We want to thank everybody for who watched us live. Because we started about an hour late. Really appreciate you guys sticking with us on this. And for everybody else that's listening or watching after the fact, it's all the same to you. So with that, I'm Ryan Shrout.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath. And if you do, I'm Alan Malentano. I'm Alan. Yeah.
And
that was appropriate.
We'll see you next week for the last PC Perspective podcast ever, episode 199.
Ever.